GMA 7. How about
I want to ask director Ben, how did the movie come about? How was the process?
Yes. So the question is, how did the movie come about and what was the process? First, I just want to say I spoke to Alessandra not too long ago. She feels deeply apologetic that she couldn't be here. She really cares about this film and respects all of your time, and so she was very, very sorry that she couldn't come. She's fallen ill. As far as how the movie came to be, I'm a filmmaker in the U.S. and I came across a photograph of a woman holding her husband who had just been killed. And I could not shake this image from my head. Woke up thinking about it, went to bed thinking about it, and just felt compelled to understand further what had led to that. And so I found the journalist who had arranged the story, and I called her here in Manila. That's Rika, who ended up becoming our researcher. And she, on the phone from Los Angeles to Manila, told me story after story of different stories that she was covering and people that she was covering here. And I couldn't believe it and understand. And so she invited me to come to Manila and spend a couple weeks with her and the journalist friends and sort of do some ride-alongs. And there was a lot of really emotional scenes that we went to. Scenes where people, had lost a loved one due to the drug wars and this and that. And for me, I'm American. I had never been here before. I even asked myself, why do I feel the need to come and tell this story? What's something? And I felt that there was a higher presence that was compelling me to come do this. And so when I came, I was really amazed at just how welcomed I was by Pinoy people, Filipino people, some of the nicest, warmest people I've ever met in the world, and just very optimistic and welcoming. And so through hearing people's stories, I realized more and more that this was something that I had to do. And so I did a lot of research. I really made sure, knowing as an outsider coming here to do a film, a local story in Tagalog.
Did you find it challenging to do a project wherein you're not really very familiar with the milieu?
With the milieux. Yes, there were challenges to making this film. I think because there was a very warm and welcoming community, both in the film side and also just in the public and the stories that we were talking to. The beautiful thing about cinema is that it's a universal language, and it's a window into the human condition. And so whether the film is in Tagalog or English or Hindi, there's a certain truth in the human experience. And that's the great thing about cinema, is that it can break down divides and allow you to walk in someone else's shoes. And so some of the challenges of language were not as difficult as one would imagine. Of course, Alessandra and Art and Jade all, very fluent in English, so it was easy to communicate between takes. And then in the middle of the take, I would just watch their eyes and see if they believed it. And if they did, then we knew we were getting what we wanted.
So how would you, how is it working with the Filipino cast?
It was actually the cast and crew were willing to be so giving and supportive with their time. And I felt a lot of support in the process. And I think, sometimes when you're setting out to tell a story, the universe conspires for it to happen. And there's a certain lightning in a bottle that you catch. And in this case, everyone that was there believed in the story that we were telling and gave it 150%. And so, I've worked with a lot of actresses in the West, even like Academy Award winners. And the level of talent that Alessandra brought to this is incredible. It's very unique. I think she's a national treasure in a lot of ways. And I think she can win an Oscar one day. She's truly one of the greats, not just here, but in the world. And so I felt very fortunate to work with people like Alessandra and others who were not only incredibly talented, but very kind people and very collaborative.
no more questions?
Naka-nosebleed daw kayo ng request.
One more question.
Okay.
How's how did you assemble the cast?
Producers at Reality Entertainment, and direct Eric Monti, who I think is one of the greatest visionaries from the Philippines, has a great reputation amongst the cast and relationships. And so they were the ones who suggested to me Alessandra. And I saw a film of hers, Woman of the Ruins, and I was just totally blown away. And in that film also was Art Acuna, who had a tremendous performance. And so it was like that. It was like either being recommended someone and meeting with them, or seeing their work. And so Jake Macapagal, for example, was in Metro Manila, which was a huge international hit and won the award at Sundance. And so when I was in Hollywood, that film got circulated pretty widely among Hollywood executives, and so I had seen it. And so Art Acuna was like, you should talk to Jake, and I met him and realized he'd be perfect. And then Miko I had seen in this film Bambanti with Alessandra, and he was much smaller at the time. And when he came in to read for the part, I just almost had tears in my eyes. And so I don't know if everyone's seen the film yet, but Miko steals the show in a lot of ways, and it's a remarkable performance.
Thank you, Mr. Lars Santiago. Any more questions?
Yung reaction ni Miko sa sinabi ni Direk.
Ano po?
Reaction ni Miko sa sinabi ni Direk.
Miko, ano daw ang reaction mo sa sinabi tungkol sa'yo ni Direk?
Actually po ngayon ko lang po nalaman na napanood yung pala yung buong party. Kasi po, isa rin po yun sa pelikula pong isa po yung memorable sa akin na mga nagawa ko pong pelikula. Yung naging nanay ko rin po si Tita Alessandra de Rossi. Na marami rin po natuwa sa amin. At natuwa rin po ako kasi po napanood po ni Direk yung ginawa po na pelikula dati. Kaya po, na-miss ko rin po si Tita Alessandra po noon na maging nanay ko po ulit. Kaya po, nung nalaman ko po yung audition po dito sa pelikula nito, na ginanahan po ako ng sota, lalo na po nung nalaman ko pong si Tita Alessandra po yung magiging nanay ko. Komportable po ako bilang nanay ko. Komportable po ako bilang nanay ko po siya sa lahat po ng mga naging pelikula namin. Kaya maraming salamat po at ginawa niyo po ako bilang cast niyo po.
He said, thank you very much for casting him in your film. Direk.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me your all.
Yes, from Miss Kate Agahar.
Hi, sir.
Translation.
Sir, is it your first time filming?
In the US, I have directed a film in India previous to this, and that was the film called The Ashram with Galpen. And so I actually am quite excited to shoot films outside of the US. There's incredible stories and incredible talent, and also filmmaking communities all over the world, and Manila was no exception. I feel very fortunate to have top level both artists and technicians. Shooting in the Philippines has its own unique challenges. Shoot on a film set, this is takes place in some very violent neighborhoods. And so, shooting in the real location was a challenge in that, you have less control of those circumstances. Weather was an issue, we got hit with typhoons. It was not an easy shoot, it was a very intense labor of love. But I think that authenticity is something you can't reproduce, and that truth was always the guiding principle of this. It's very important that their faces and their communities are represented truthfully. And for me, I felt a huge responsibility as a foreigner coming to tell this story, that if we didn't tell it truthfully, that it would actually be disrespectful for the people that it was about and for audiences here. So we did a tremendous amount of research and homework to make sure that it's represented. And people say filmmaking is telling a story. I actually think filmmaking is deeply listening to stories around you and that reproducing that authentically. And so for me, it was really just every detail to make sure it was truthful. And so my hope is that the film will happen because it's coming sort of filtered through a universal lens. And so, like I was saying earlier, cinema has the power to transcend across divides. Like people in France and in Los Angeles and in New York and have seen this film and connected to it on a human level. And my hope is here also that it can connect across different groups of people to see the humanity in all of us.
How long did it take to finish the whole film?
We shot the film over 16 days, and then it was a long post-production. It ended up being about a year of post-production. And that's just also how things, in Hollywood they spend a lot more time, so it was just a little bit longer in that regard. So I guess about a year and a half total.
And would you be interested in doing other films in the future?
I would certainly be open to it. I think it's really about the story itself. Is there something that I connect to that because it's a long process to make a film. So if there was other stories, we've even talked about a sequel to watch this with Miko. But when you see the film, you'll know why that is a conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
Hi Ben, I'm John. I'm a blogger. First and foremost, this particular topic is a very sensitive one. Foremost in the Philippines because, of course, even though it's fiction, it's kind of a reality for us. Were you mostly shocked about what was happening? Generally.
We discovered and then we heard and then we put into the film. They're not the only realities. I think, when I came to the Philippines, I was, this was just one small sliver of what was happening here. And, just going out and seeing the nightlife and the, just people going to work. And I mean, it's like anywhere, this is just one aspect of what was happening. And so it was definitely heartbreaking to hear. And so for us, we really decided to focus on the human cost and the human story. And it's really about family and what you would do for the people you love, what the lengths you would go to. And sometimes in these stressful situations, we can actually hurt the people we love without realizing it. And it comes from a place of love. And so the film really studies that. And also, I think the film is also about the stigma that we place on certain people, that the sins of your past should not determine the actions of your present. And that, putting certain people, and this is anywhere in the world, in my country back home, it's incredibly divided right now. There's groups of people that are dehumanizing each other. And so this is, I think, a human issue that we're all faced with now, which is how do we not place judgment on those who, might have done things in their past? And how do we see the humanity in all of us? And so my hope is that a film like this can help recognize that humanity.
Was it difficult to actually make it a little bit apolitical? Because of course it's like a campaign of the government to have that drug war in the first place. Was it difficult to have that separate and just plainly make it a story of a mother person?
The campaign of the drug war has 2 points of view to it, one that's for and one that's against. And so in the film, we try to explore both perceptions. It's not, saying it's good or it's bad, it's not one-sided. But it did, I feel a certain sense of responsibility not to color it with my own perspective, to try and stay objective about it. And so in the end, yes, there were challenges and there's sensitivity, but by focusing on the family and the human story, our hope is that the politics take a backseat, and that you can go in and watch this film, regardless of how you feel about politics, and just be taken for an intensely emotional roller coaster.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. Who else?
Magsigta siya.
Ano po, sa lahat po ng mga nagawa kong pelikula, isa po si Direk sa pinakamagaling po para sa akin. Kasi siya po yung tipong director na magasasalain niya po lahat. Yung mga shots, kung ano po yung mismong angulo ng camera, tapos kung paano po yung mga unit po natin ng mga artista, kung paano po yung gusto niyang pag-atake, kailangan niya pong makuha yun. Kasi para mas maganda po yung maging resulta po ng magiging shot po natin. Kumbaga, tsaka ano rin po si Direk, hindi po siya kagaya po ng
Local director.
Opo, na
Yung director na umawak sa'yo.
Opo.
Sisigawan ka ba?
Opo, parang ganun po. Hindi po, hindi po siya ganun. Hindi po.
Na-lost lahat. Feel free, na-lost lahat. Synchronize mo.
You can just talk loudly.
Ayaw na video.
Ayan, okay na. Sige, continue. Please continue your storytelling about director.
Say something nice, Miko.
Yeah. It's not saying something nice.
Please tell me afterwards.
Yes, okay. Nico, your experience working with director.
Si Direk po, hindi po siya kagaya po ng yun na po.
Ibang local directors na sisigawan ka.
Ano po siya,
Cool.
opo, cool. Tsaka kahit na medyo naiinis na po siya kasi nga, halimbawa po nawawala ng araw, gano'n. Kalmado pa rin po siya kahit na gano'n po. Kumbaga, madali lang po siyang pakisamahan.
Eh, sabi niya raw, parang ikaw raw ang nagdala ng buong pelikula dito sa based on what Direk said about your performance. He stole the show?
He does, and many of the scenes that he's in, he's still.
Yeah. Yes.
Can I say something else about Miko?
Yes. Yeah.
So I originally had pictured someone a bit older for the role,
Okay.
but when I saw Miko, his intensity looked for the most talented people, and so it actually brings a different level of story that he's slightly younger, and I think it breaks people's heart to see what happens, what he does in the film, and so I really, it's a combination of raw talent and hard work, but I see Miko going places in his career, and that this is hopefully just the beginning.
Okay, galing. Naintindihan ko ba yun? So, kumusta mga ulit? Pangalawang beses yun na bang maging anak niyo, no? Pangalawang beses.
Actually po, pangatlo.
Ano yung na?
Lagi
That's the first one.
Short film po yun eh.
Short film.
Kalimutan. Okay lang yun.
Alingan mo sa panahon ng pagpapasyahin po yun. Short film.
Yung second mo.
Yung bombante po, yun po yung full depth po.
And then ito.
Ito po yung full.
So, ito lang. Kumusta si Alessandra kay Xena Milko na alam naman nila na magaling na artista? Nasabayan mo ba siya dito? Especially kanina, nagsasabihin mo, dami mong lalaki na.
Si Tita Alessandra po, ano po siya, pagdating po sa eksena na po mismo sa oras na po ng take, ano po siya, seryoso na po. Kumbaga, pag may oras po ng biroan, may oras po na trabaho po talaga. Hindi po siya yung...
Luka-luka.
I mean, ano po siya? Hindi po, pag wala po kami sa take po, or kumakain na po kami ng break time po. Ano po siya, palabiro po siya, tapos nakakatawa po siya palagi, kaya ganito po. Pero pagdating po sa yung taping, yung take na po mismo, ano po siya, ayaw niya na po ng yung makaka-distract sa kanya. Gusto niya po yung, parang matapos po kami agad, gusto niya po yung teamwork po kami lahat, magtulungan po kami, para matapos po agad yung scene na ito.
Hindi ka naman natakot sa kanya itong third time na to,
Hindi naman po.
Hindi ka gaya ng mauna. Nung ka sa kanya. Hindi naman.
Hindi naman po. Bihira naman po ako magpasawag pag take ng movies.
Okay. Tanong ko si Ben. Ben, Parasite won as Best Picture in the recent Oscar Awards. So, what can you say about Filipino films if you just this, like this? Do we have a chance?
Absolutely. I think Parasite winning completely changes the conversation for the Oscars and what can win. It levels the playing field in terms of what is really good cinema can rise and travel. And so, you know, it really opens the doors for Filipino filmmakers and films to be considered for the Oscars. And actually, in France, the distributor that released Parasite bought this film and will release this next, and they see it as in the similar space for audiences. And so our hope is that, you know, by this hybrid style filmmaking of, you know, American director, Filipino cast and story, it feels like we're in a day and age where that's possible.
Okay, thank you. Are you staying here for good? Are you willing to do films for local producers then? Will you be doing?
I was here for about 6 months in the pre-production and production of the film, and then I'm here for a few weeks now. I actually haven't even begun to explore the country, so I'm excited. After this movie release, I'll go see more of the country because all I saw was Caloocan City.
Caloocan.
Yeah, that's where we shot the film. So people say, "Oh, you went to the Philippines? It's so beautiful." I said, "All I really saw was Second Avenue." But I would love to keep the conversation going if there are projects here. For me, it really comes down to the story. You know, a film takes 2 years of your life, and it's 90 minutes of the audience's experience. So that 2 years has to be something you feel deeply to compel you through the whole process. And so for me, it really just comes down to story, and I do see incredible stories here.
If you would be given the chance to do a film, working with a local film, working with the local actors, what story in mind would you like to do that will develop that will be shown internationally?
I mean, this is it. This is the film. Yeah,
Okay.
you know, this is my 5th film, but to be honest, it's the one I'm most deeply proud of. It's a very emotional film, and I think that even though, you know, as an American director coming here, you know, not knowing what a public audience would want, I also know that Filipino people are very like to feel deeply and are very like family is very important. And so regardless of, you know, sensibility, my hope is that the film connects with people on an emotional level. If you want to feel something very intensely, this film is for you.
Thank you and good luck then.
Thank you.
Lar?
May question pa, Tita Lar?
Okay, Miko, please tell us, ano yung mga ginawa mo, I mean, between Bambanti and
Ano po ako doon, bata ko. Bilang po sa probinsya, sa Isabela po namin sinagpulo. Sa Bambanti po, ano lang po siya, kumbaga kung paano po mamuhay yung pamilya po namin sa probinsya. Dito naman po sa watchlist, sa ano po, kumbaga parang sa Maynila po yung buhay po namin, kung ano po yung nangyayari sa paligid.
so ano yung ginawa mo? Ano yung pinagkaabalahan mo between nung after ng Bambanti at saka ito, watchlist, sa pagitan ng dalawang pelikula, ano yung mga pinagkaabalahan mo?
Sa Bambanti, pagkatapos po sa Bambanti po namin, ano po, kasi po, bumalik ka ba ng school? Ako bumalik po, pero pa rin naman po ako. Pumapasok pa rin naman po ako. Doon po kasi nung nag-shooting po kami ng Bambanti, absent po ako ng ilang week kasi po sa Isabela campus, so mahabang dito po, ano po siya, parang nakaschedule po yung pagpasok ko.
Okay, Ben, are there other stories that have been offered to you? I mean, stories from here?
There was a project that Alessandra and I were talking about. It was a it was a wonderful collaboration, and there is that conversation of working together again. I would say, as a director, they say 90% of good directing is casting. And so, this film, not just Alessandra and Miko, but Jake and Art, everyone is performing at their top game. And so it's a very different style of performance, very grounded and reality based. And even just the producers like Sir Don and Eric, for them to take a risk on a film like this that's an international collaboration speaks volumes about them. And so I'm excited to continue all the conversations and possibilities.
I understand Watch List has been to some festivals. How was that?
It's been a wild ride. We premiered in Seattle, and we went to Deauville, which is considered the best of the best American films from that year. And to be honest, it was the first Filipino film in Deauville. And they double checked. They said, "You're American, but the film is Filipino, so where does this fall into our category?" And I said, "It's for you to decide," and they still took it. So that was an incredible honor. We just won our first award at this Belgian festival last week for the best film. And so it's been remarkable, I think, to be able, the power of cinema is to bring these stories to the world. And hopefully by having, international perspective and also local perspective, we can help open up the conversations and audiences around the world. So we will release in the US in April, theatrical release there, and then we also have the release in France coming and a few other territories. So it's landing with audiences.
Before Watch List, what did you have any?
Direct Eric's film On the Job, and it blew me away with the type of stories that were being told from here. And so that's actually how I met Direct Eric, was through those producers of that film, XYZ Films, in the US. I called them and I said, "Do you know anyone in the Philippines?" And they said, "Yes, and we'll talk to Direct Eric and Sir Don." And so I had seen some of the more groundbreaking cinema coming from here, and that was really exciting to be able to come. And for me, like I said, it was the decision was more from the heart. I felt called here, and so I always ask myself, why should I be the one to tell the story? But in some cases, you are the vessel for the story. I feel like the universe wanted it to happen, and it chose me to be the one to tell it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to ask? From Mr. Mel Navarro. Question from
Hello, welcome to the Philippines Direct. Are you familiar that there are other Filipino films that talk about extrajudicial killings, and were you able to have a glimpse about those films?
What about them?
Were you able to watch or have an idea that there are other films about extrajudicial killings?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them, and I'm aware of those the other stories. It's a very sensitive topic, and so the intensity that people feel about it, either one way or the other, for or against, is something that was most important for us to capture truthfully. So again, I feel I only made this film if we were saying something, adding to the conversation. Not really. Our hope is that this could be the definitive film on the subject.
All right. What major production problems did you encounter, if any, in shooting here in the Philippines?
I think shooting in the real neighborhoods in Caloocan, which is one of the most dangerous barangays in this particular Second Avenue. We discovered this neighborhood because Eric shot on the job there and told us stories about going into the footpaths and getting lost. And I guess sometimes somewhat distressing that there would be stories around us of what we were actually portraying. Early on, we'd shot by these train tracks and built part of the Maria's house there, and there was a train that came by and actually hit the set and took part of it with it. And it was a really long shoot outdoors in nighttime, and people fell sick, and it was for us the most important thing is that people are safe, because I never, as a director, want to put people in harm's way. And so there was always a consideration of like safety first, especially if we're doing a film like this that's, portraying the subject. We have to make sure that we're sensitive to everyone that's in front of the camera and behind the camera.
Maybe for my last question, why do you think the Filipino audience should watch your film next week?
Well, like I said, I think it's a story about family and love, and a mother doing anything to protect her children. And in America, we don't have the same strong family unit as here. And on my Indian side of the family, it's similar. Like not just your mother, father, brother, sister, but aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. It's really the heart of the Filipino culture. And so, for me, this is the love is what triumphs all. And so in hardship, I think that if the Filipinos have a big heart. I felt most people I've met hold family close and are very warm and welcoming. And so my hope is that the film's heart speaks to the hearts of the people.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from Cesar Batina.
Hi, Miko po. We found out that this film was rated R16 by MTRCD. Miko, ano yung pakiramdam na hindi mo siya mapapanood sa big screen?
Premiere night.
Okay lang naman po. Isang sa tanga lang po.
Basta premiere night with power.
Okay lang naman po kasi sensitive na naman po yung nangyayari po. So,
Ano yung sa tingin mo yung pinaka-challenge na ginawa mo dito? Yung talagang sumubok sa pagiging artista mo?
yung yung part po na bantang nila na nakagapos po ako sa stage. Ayun po kasi, yun magdamag po namin sinunod, tsaka halos maubos na po yung boses ko kasi halos lahat po kami nagsigaw po talaga.
Okay, bilang isang Pilipino at bilang kabataang Pilipino, ano yung realization mo after mong gawin at i-portray yung character mo?
Siguro po, maging na lang po, maging responsable na lang po tayo sa lahat po ng mga gagawin po natin. Huwag po tayong kagaya po sa mga kabataan, kagaya ko pong kabataan na kagaya po ng iba sa amin na yung iba po kasi nalululong po sa droga. Hanggat maaari, iwasan na lang po. Or sa mga hindi pa po nakakatry, huwag po nilang iiwasan talaga. Huwag po nilang susubukan kasi pag nasubukan po nila, sobrang laki na po kasing problema yung pinasubukan nila.
Direct Ben, we know that as a filmmaker, you are creating a film not just only to entertain the audience, but to give something to us as an audience po. In your own, in your instinct, what value that you put there as a Filipino from this film?
Yeah, I will say that while I'm excited that the film is releasing in the US and Europe, I'm most nervous and excited how it will be received here, because it's a Filipino story, and it's impossible to see the film and not feel something very deeply, one way or the other. It's impossible. It's a very, hopefully, impactful film. What impact that will be, I don't know yet. But my greatest hope with any film is, and so there are a lot of, like I was saying back, even in the U.S. now, there's a lot of divisions within society, and some groups, not getting along with other groups, and that's a human issue. I think also happens here, and so my hope is that this can humanize the humanity in all of us and help break down divides and maybe change our perceptions of, we're talking about stigma, like addicts and addiction. There's a stigma of what you've done in your past is how you are judged now. And my hope is that this can give a little bit of humanity and see that everyone is suffering, and film can actually show us the humanity in each of us to break down that suffering together and hopefully build compassion. So my greatest hope is that the film can, break down those divides and see the compassion in all of us.
And my last question po, after this film being showed here in the Philippines, what's awaits for this? Do you will send it to other film festival abroad and the other countries?
Yeah, we're also excited because once the film releases here, we'll continue the releases around the world. And so there's a lot more US festivals it's going to play in. They're releasing in the US. And it's making waves in the Hollywood community. Like the people that have seen it are really responding to it. I even know Alessandra got called from a Hollywood producer recently about her performance here. So I think the exciting thing is that it can open the world up to Filipino talent and Filipino stories. And for me, it's more exciting to be a bridge builder in that way.
Thank you. We have last question from Mr. Pablo Caniman.
Hello. My questions, just a few questions. What is your feeling like shooting a film that is often the content of day-to-day news on TV? And then, knowing the situation in the Philippines, what do you want to achieve as a filmmaker as it applies to this project?
Yeah, I think the thing about fiction storytelling is that newspapers and or statistics, this goes beyond the story. I think for me, what really drew me to the story is looking beyond the headlines and saying, okay, there's a story of someone, a father who's been killed in the drug wars, and that's the story. But the real story for me starts the next day. What is it like to move forward with the hole in your family, and what does that feel like to every day after that? And that's when a lot of times the news story moves on, but the family has to exist like this and live on. And so for me, it was really how do we understand the domino effect that happens after the headline. What I hope to accomplish with this, I really think, like I've said, cinema is there's power to build compassion and build understanding. I really think, we live in difficult times, and it's not, in many places in the world, and films can give us hope. As much as they can show us the common suffering of each other, they can inspire hope in us, and it's my hope to do that.
Yeah, last question. What are the best things that came out from this collaboration?
For me, this was the first film that I created entirely from the heart. I had always approached creation as a little bit more intellectual or academic, and this film, I really felt like there was a hand that was guiding it into the world, and that I was this vessel for the story to happen. And for me, that was a breakthrough. And honestly, I felt a responsibility to the people that this film is about. Like there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that are living in, it's been hard for a lot of people. And so I felt a tremendous responsibility. If I didn't get this story right, it would actually be hurtful or disrespectful. And so, I guess, and honestly, the collaborations. Like I've worked in situations where, when you're trying to make the film, there's a lot of other forces at play. But this one, everyone was playing the same song, and when you see it, you can feel that. It's not different. I say being a director is like being a conductor in a symphony. Like you are there, but you are providing everyone the atmosphere to create. And sometimes you do that and people are playing.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. Director Ben and Nico, please invite our media friends to help us support the movie.
Well, thanks everyone. I'm Ben Ricky, the director of Watchlist for Reality Entertainment with Alessandra Rossi. Very excited to present this film to the Filipino audience. Been a labor of love. There's a huge heart, a huge story about family. So come see it on February 19th. We'll see you next week.
Ano po, ako po si Miguel Orente, ako po dito si Mark. Inimbitahan ko po kayong manood po ng pelikula namin Watchlist. Tungkol po ito sa pagmamahalan po ng pamilya, ng between sa anak po tsaka sa ina po. Kung gaano po sila katatag magmahalan kahit na po nung pinaka sila problema. Kaya po sana po panoorin niyo po. Marami po kayong lesson na matutunan dito. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you, Director Ben. And